On Mike Watkins Investigates today, we're going to be looking at UFOs. Well, to be more exact, examining what they could be. Stroud FM presenter Paul Farrar recalls an encounter he had with a UFO a few years ago, and I myself will be telling you all about what I saw in the skies above Gloucester and Stroud back in 1999, and we'll be hearing about some more recent UFO sightings around the Stroud area. Now, over the years, I've read numerous books about UFO sightings in history. There are loads of theories about them. Aliens from other planets, visitors from our future, but what's undeniable is that throughout human history, something unidentifiable has always been visible in our skies. The whole point of this program is to fuel the fires of debate. Not to be sensationalist, but to provide food for thought. If we go back in history, there are hundreds of descriptions of what are very similar to modern-day UFO accounts. Believe it or not, UFOs were described in the Bible and chronicled in ancient Chinese texts. There were reports of them in Rome 200 years before Christ and in Germany throughout the 16th century. And of course they were christened Foo Fighters by Allied pilots during World War II and have even been quoted as being seen by former US President Jimmy Carter and indeed the wife of the current Japanese Prime Minister. In what we believe was around 45,000 BC in China, rock carvings of round UFO-like objects have been found in the Henan province, and the depictions date back to the age of the Neanderthals. In 12,000 BC China, the Dropper was the name given to visitors from Sirius who were said to have come down from the clouds with their air gliders. Australian Aboriginal cave drawings depict celestial beings with antenna and X-ray style drawings. According to their texts, the Sumerians from today's Iraq had contact with extraterrestrial civilizations around 4000 BC. They said that the extraterrestrials were from Mars, and also from the star system Pleiades and the star Sirius, and Sumerian texts actually have drawings of a solar system. Funnily enough, Peru's pre-Incan civilization records the gods were from the same star system Pleiades as well. And finally, in 9 BC Japan, 9 moons were seen in the night sky over the community, very similar to the V-shaped UFO sightings in the US a few years ago. Of course, all these sightings may be fueled by ignorance, perhaps celestial events, or made up. But we know there have been reports of countless encounters between UFOs and UFO entities throughout history, and that was long before 1947, when the famous Roswell incident happened in New Mexico, which is generally considered to be the first major UFO story by most people. Now, after the next song, Stroud FM's very own Paul Farrar will be revealing for the first time an experience he had with a UFO a number of years ago. For once, we're going to hear Paul being serious, and what he has to say is fascinating, I can tell you. In the studio with me, I've got Paul Farrar.
Hello, darling.
The icon of Stroud FM 107.9. I hear that you had a fascinating encounter with a UFO a number of years ago. Little bird told me.
No?
No? Oh,
I did, yeah. I did have a fantastic UFO sighting. Would you like me to tell you about it?
I certainly would, Paul, yeah. Where was it then? Where was this UFO sighting?
Well, it was while I was driving on the way to work. I was working in Swindon at the time. I was driving down the A419 from Cirencester to Swindon. And it was quite sunny. I remember I was wearing sunglasses in the car, so my eyes were relaxed. There was no glare coming in from the sunglasses to affect my vision. And looking through the window screen at the road, I just glanced upwards at the sky, because I'm always looking up at the sky to see what's out there. And this oval-shaped object, it was the shape of an egg. It was rather like an egg, brown in colour as well. Oh, I say brown in colour, the sunglasses were brown, so it would be, wouldn't it? But it was definitely egg-shaped, and I remember looking at this thing, what on earth is that hovering, over this motorway? So I took my sunglasses off, because I want to make sure it wasn't, a trick of the light on the sunglasses. It wasn't something reflecting off the window screen, like a drop of water or something like that. It wasn't. The window screen was clear. There was nothing on that would suggest to me that it was looking like a UFO when it wasn't. But I couldn't see it because the sun was really bright. And that's what amazed me, actually, is that the sun was really bright. But with the sunglasses and the glare wasn't bright on my eyes, I could see this oval-shaped object. So there it was, hidden in the sun's glare, but visible because I was wearing sunglasses. And it just hovered there. It just hovered there as I was driving. And that was around a place called Blunsdon Hill. It's that hill that you go up on the 419 as you go into Swindon, as you approach Blunsdon roundabout. And I'll never forget it because it was so clear. It was unmistakable. You know, I checked the window screen to make sure that there wasn't nothing on the window screen that could be causing an illusion on my eyes, and there wasn't. And no, I'll never forget it. It was as clear as you sitting in front of me right now.
One thing that I saw a UFO a number of years ago, and the first thing that I thought was, no one's going to believe me.
Yeah, you do have that feeling, don't you, that when you talk about it, people go, oh, well, it was just a trick of the light, or, oh, it was a plane, you know, easily explainable, a bird, or the planet Venus.
Was there anything in the paper?
I'm not finished. The planet Venus is responsible for most UFO sightings, I find, yeah. Because when you look at that planet for long enough, it starts to shake in the sky. It starts to move about. So people looking up at the sky have seen Venus moving around and thought it was a UFO. So I am very, very familiar with the celestial bodies that are out there and the content of the night sky and the day sky, to know that what I'm seeing up there at that point in time when I observed it through the window screen of my car was not a natural phenomena. You know, I've studied a lot of natural phenomena floating into our biosphere from outer space, and no, this was nothing like I've seen before. So I'm absolutely convinced that what I saw that day was a UFO. And as for the nature of the UFO, I don't know.
What was people's reaction when you told them?
Well, I haven't told anyone. I only told you.
Really?
Yeah.
So you didn't say anything to anyone?
Well, that's not exactly true. I've told a couple of people, and they kind of gave me a blank expression where they weren't leaning themselves to, oh, that's great, or no, they don't exist. You can't have seen that. It must have been something else. But I do generally find when I'm talking about other things to do with UFOs, various theories about UFOs and ancient aliens. You know, you're familiar with the work of von Daniken and Robert Temple and Chariots of the God and the Sirius Mystery, that you do get very, very strange looks. And I know that people do keep UFO sightings to themselves because they're worried that people out there might think that they're strange, odd, question their mental capacities. You know, particularly people in high profile jobs like to keep this a secret because they wonder that it might reflect negatively upon them. Because I think although we've had a tremendous amount of UFO sightings now and really convincing footage, that the majority of the population still think that this is a subject that is taboo, really. It's a subject that they feel uncomfortable with, that people will question their credibility, their intelligence, their mental state of mind. And I think a lot of people feel very, very reluctant to talk about it. Certainly as far as big cats existing here in Gloucestershire, which is another thing that I'm very interested in, I came across quite a few people who have seen big cats but have kept that to themselves because they thought that people would laugh and ridicule them. And I think that's very much the case now, and has always been with UFOs, unidentified flying objects.
Was there anything in the newspapers or on the television about the UFO that you saw?
I've seen quite a lot of newspaper articles about UFOs and lots of convincing footage. I've got a lot of very convincing footage on film myself. Recently we've seen UFOs particularly visible over Essex. Essex seems to be a UFO hotspot at the moment. A lot of people are seeing them down there, and particularly the triangular shaped UFO. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, the triangular shaped UFO with the lights on each corner of the triangle, which has also been seen recently in Belgium. So it seems to be a phenomenon that is cropping up around Europe at the moment, which also interests me.
But surely, with those sort of aircraft, or whatever they are, wouldn't you think that it was maybe military linked?
I think that's possible. I think that there's a lot of military construction in the area of aircraft technology that is secret, that is used, that people do from time to time see, and mistaken them for UFOs. And we'll talk about Area 51. And that, well, it's a show, you could do a whole show on that subject, couldn't you, Area 51?
You might do.
But you might do. For people who don't know about Area 51, there's a top secret military Air Force base in America in the Nevada desert known as Area 51. and allegedly, and I do say allegedly because I haven't been there and I haven't seen it, but there has been a number of UFO sightings, particularly silver-shaped discs and balls floating around in the air above the Nevada desert. And a leading physicist who used to work in Area 51 at this top-secret base called Bob Lazar, I don't know whether you're familiar, Spike, with that, are you?
Definitely.
Bob Lazar claims that not only did he see UFOs there, but he also worked on them. And that a lot of the technology that the American Air Force has now, and I'm particularly thinking of these stealth fighter bombers. For those of you who don't know what stealth is, it's like a bat-shaped winged plane that is undetectable on radar, and Bob Lazar claims that the technology for this came from UFOs, and that the Roswell incident, the crash in Roswell, where allegedly a UFO and alien bodies were recovered, were actually stored in Area 51, and the technology from that particular crash has helped the US government and the US Air Force develop some amazing technology within their aircraft. Whether this is true or not, I don't know, but let's be open-minded about it. Let's not shut it out. Let's embrace what could be an absolutely fascinating subject that could help the development and progression of our race.
One of the things that you spoke to me about earlier, which fascinated me, was the fact that it is actually believed that the moon is a spaceship.
Yeah, a giant hollow alien spaceship sent around the Earth's orbit in its remote prehistoric past. Yeah, that was a theory proposed by two Russian scientists back in the early 1970s. I remember at the age of 15 getting a hold of Don Wilson's book called Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon. I have that book at home still. And to me it was just absolutely mind-blowing. You know, this idea that the moon is a hollowed-out alien spaceship, and the evidence that they proposed to suggest this was very convincing. I still am very, very convinced by it. Again, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, but it is very, very compelling what these two Russian scientists are putting forward as a theory that the moon is a giant alien spaceship. In fact, every time I look at it now in the night sky or the day sky, I can't help but think, is it or isn't it a giant alien spaceship?
And you've also mentioned to me about lights on the moon.
I have mentioned lights on the moon, but I want to get back to what I was talking about before I was rudely interrupted.
Get on with it then.
Now, one of the theories of UFOs visiting the Earth ties in with the hollow alien spaceship theory. And this is it. When I was at school, and I'm not an alien, when I was at school, I went to my physics teacher with this book, Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon by Don Wilson. I went, Sir, the moon is a giant hollowed-out alien spaceship. To which he replied, don't be silly, sit down there, filling your head with nonsense. But the head of the science department believed that UFOs were based on the moon, and that UFO sightings were extraterrestrials returning to observe us, their experiment on Earth, and how we were progressing. And the way that the alien spaceship theory ties into this is, was the human race created by an alien civilization? Was it put here on Earth where it developed, it progressed, and that UFO sightings are aliens returning, our creators returning? Oh, there's a big subject now, and I'll put my foot right on it. The creators.
We're going to talk about the Jesus thing as well.
Returning to Earth to observe their experiment and seeing how it's getting on. And that again ties in with the work of Erich von Däniken, one of the ancient alien theorists. He was not the first. A lot of people think he was the first. He wasn't. It just so happened that he caught the public's imagination at a certain time with his work, at the time that we were landing on the moon. But he wasn't the first. His suggestion that human beings were an alien experiment created here on Earth, and that all the events in the Bible, all the civilizations that we have here on Earth, were a result of their intervention. Gods coming from the sky, chariots of fire, the parting of the Red Sea. Von Däniken explained these as being all products of alien intervention, and that all cultures originate from these stories of our early experiences of being on contact with giant extraterrestrial beings from outer space.
Well, his first 3 books were very convincing, but unfortunately then it was proven that a lot of the things that he wrote later on were made up. But he had a very good argument for that in as much as he said that, well, hang on, wait a minute, I got a 7-book deal. And
I've got to fill these books somehow.
I've got to fill these books up. The first 3 are very, very convincing and very, very...
Well, that's Chariots of the Fire, Chariots of the Gods. Well, that's a film, isn't it? Chariots of the Fire.
That's right.
Chariots of the Gods, Return to the Stars, and Gold of the Gods. The first 3. I do have other books of his. The Aztec lines as well. Von Daniken suggested that they were runways for alien spaceship returning to Earth.
Yeah.
And that also aliens intervened in the building of the pyramids, for example. So, but, I mean, keeping a very balanced argument to this, there's also people who refute this theory and say it's a load of nonsense. Carl Sagan, for example, was a big proponent of that, saying that this is, there is life in the universe. We cannot believe that we're the only intelligent life force in the universe when it is such a massive, massive thing. That would be arrogant and egoistic of us. But he didn't believe that the human being was a product of alien intervention and genetics. No. But then again, how can we say yes or no? None of us on the Earth at the moment was there at the time. We don't have any trace memories of this happening. So again, let's keep an open mind, and the world becomes a fascinating place. So I'm going to carry on now.
Okay. Well, Paul, can you go on, get on with it.
We were talking about Von Daniken's work being refuted, but let's just keep in mind that he was not the first. There were other very serious scholars and archaeologists out there. I've named a couple. Peter Colissimo is another one. You know, Our Ancestors Came from Outer Space was his book, who were very dedicated to this, and their approaches were very scientific. Alexander Sitchin as well, and his book, The 10th Planet. And 4 books he wrote on the subject. One of them was also called Stairway to Heaven, which has nothing to do with the Led Zeppelin song. But each one of these referred to areas of the Bible, aspects of the Bible, that he suggested were chronicling alien intervention in our evolution and development. So a lot of very serious people studied this subject, and a lot of it is very credible, I think.
Absolutely. Now, I've got a UFO story to tell. It was going back to 1999, and my wife and I were driving all the way up to Cranham from Tuffley, and we were going to go to the pub, the Royal William. Remember, this was before we went to the pub, rather than afterwards. And above us, on the right-hand side of the vehicle, we saw this huge disc. Now, it was, I would say, the size of 2 football fields. It was bright orange, and there were white lights that were spinning in an anti-clockwise direction. Now, my wife looked up, and she saw it. I saw it. I slowed the car down, and we stopped on the motorway bridge just as you're going through Brooksthorpe to Matson. And I looked up, and I said, yeah, it's still there. I got out of the car, and to be honest with you, it was quite frightening. It was nerve-wracking. You didn't quite know what it was, and I jumped straight back into the car. I must admit, I zipped off pretty quickly and looked up, and it was still there, and it appeared to be following us. Well, we went up the hill towards Cranham, and it seemed to go out of sight. We looked up, and there wasn't anything. And then it came to a little area where there wasn't a hedge, and it appeared again. And we were halfway up the hill, and it was strange, it was eerie. We both felt uncomfortable. And when we got to the top of the hill, we turned right, obviously, towards the Royal William, and it was still there. It was directly in front of us. We went into the car park. There were a couple of people up there who were also looking up at it, and it was sort of hovering above the pub. Then it just zipped off into the distance, so fast that it was almost impossible to see it do it. And the two of us almost instinctively looked at our watches. Silly, I know, but it's that sort of feeling you get. Have we been abducted? Have we lost any time? And we went into the pub, and the landlord laughed when we told him. We said, honestly, there was something. It was bright orange. There were lights spinning. My wife saw it. I saw it. There were other people in the car park who saw it. And I went back. It was days before, sort of lots of internet conjecture. There was a little bit on there, but not like there is now. And I couldn't find anybody else who'd actually seen it. Weeks afterwards, we looked in the newspaper, nothing. And remember, this was huge. It was the size of 2 football fields without a doubt. Now, the reality of the story is, about 6 months later, my wife and I saw it again, in exactly the same place, at exactly the same time of night, around 7 o'clock. And we decided to follow it. And we drove all the way up the hill towards Stroud from Tuffley. We dropped down through Randwick, and we ended up noticing that there was a light emanating from a certain point in the trees. Now, at this point, we were quite nervous, both of us, and a little unsure should we go on. But we did, and we carried on driving down, and then it struck us. The fair was in Stratford Park, and the reflection from the top of one of the roundabouts, or the carousels, was flashing up into the air. And you've guessed it, it looked just like the UFO we saw. In fact, in all reality, we think it was that UFO that we saw. There were lights spinning in an anti-clockwise direction. It was bright orange. It looked like a UFO. When you were actually there close to it, and we parked right by the side of it, you wouldn't have known any different. You wouldn't have thought about looking up in the air and actually seeing what looked like a UFO. From a distance, it looked as though it was something moving very fast through the sky. And obviously that image that we saw of it flying off so fast that we couldn't see it, it would happen. It's going to happen. It's just moving very quickly. Bang. The distance, it would appear 30 miles, and in reality, it was just the movement of the carousel. That's my story of a UFO. I've seen others, things that I can't really explain, but for years, well, for months, I thought that that was a genuine UFO that I'd seen. And in reality, my wife and I, we know now that it was just the lights from a fairground. And that's my UFO story. It just goes to show how easily we can be fooled.